Today I'll be showing you exactly how to edit your 360 film from start to finish. You can use the same process if you have another camera, but I'll be talking specifically about the Pro 2. Recently, I had an opportunity to work with 4D Motors, which is a fitness company based in North London, and they work with the surrounding community to help inspire, motivate, and keep everybody healthy and fit. So it was a great opportunity to film and then show you guys exactly how I take the project from start to finish. And the reason why I'm making this video is for 360 creators or aspiring 360 filmmakers to understand the process and hopefully cut your workflow in half. So hopefully this video helps. Hopefully it answers any questions that you may have had or were thinking about. Set up your camera to enable post-production to be very smooth and easy. So depending on what camera you're using, make sure to figure out where the true north is so that you don't have to adjust your horizon line in post-production. We want to try to cut down as many steps in post-production as possible. The second thing is I would heavily suggest recording with ambisonic audio. I use the Zoom H2N. This is a 4-channel spatial audio microphone. If there's a sound coming from the left, when you're in full immersion, the sound will also come from the left. In the microphone, you want to make sure that spatial audio is enabled. You want to make sure you're recording onto 4 channels, and then you want to connect the microphone to your camera using a USB. The microphone is level and facing your subject. Always film in mind that if you've got different things going on and you've cut up your filming into separate activities or points in the day, then try to minimize and capture what is essential, especially for offloading and editing. So once I've done that, the next thing that I do is I stitch my footage in 2 ways. I either stitch it using the software provided by the manufacturer. That will be the Insta360 Pro Stitcher. If you're using a GoPro or another 360 camera, software will be provided by your manufacturer in order for you to stitch that footage. This is more of a basic stitch where you can edit your horizon point, you can change the brightness, contrast, and you can change a few things, how you want the audio to be rendered out and things like this. Or alternatively, if you wanted a more developed and in detail stitch, a more accurate stitch for full immersion, I would heavily suggest using Mistika VR. Mistika VR provides a lot more tools for 360 film editing, and you're able to edit your stitch in a more refined detail. So if you, for example, are working on a very big project and you wanted to deliver your client in order for them to be very happy, I would suggest using Mistika VR because it just takes the stitching and development up to the next level. And once we've rendered out our stitch of the files, 360 film files, we'll then move over to Premiere Pro, and this is more so where the fun happens, where you can add in your graphics, where you can add in different elements and just tweak everything a little bit further. So you move over to Premiere Pro and then render your project out. Today I'll be showing you how to render out for YouTube and for Oculus Media headsets or Oculus headsets. Okay, so that's just a brief introduction. We're going to get started and we're going to take the project to completion. I'm going to try to make this not boring as possible. Bear in mind you do need a little bit of patience with this process because there are several steps. So we've transferred everything over to the computer, and now the first thing I need open is Insta360 Stitcher. I'm just going to pull up the folder where I've organized my files. So these are all of my raw 360 files, and all I need to do is drag these folders into Insta360, and that will load into there. So that's going to load up. Okay, let's just pause that. I'm just going to make this expand this. So in this section, also I filmed with iLog, which I need to enable iLog for me to move over to Mistika VR if I am wanted to do my stitching over in there. Start with this one, and here what I'm trying to do is, what I want to do is set the scene start and finish. Often when I've set the camera, if I'm not using the control, I may be in the scene of the camera, but what I want to do is set up the start and finishing points. So I can see here is where they've started boxing. It starts from the beginning, but so I'm just going to set this as my start point, and we'll have a look through the footage. And we'll start our end point. So that's whole of their round. So I'll start my end point about here, and then this is monoscopic. I always choose optical flow over new optical flow because I find this produces better results. Fast sampling type and CPU for processing, and you could choose to put a Nadir in here. The Nadir is a circular kind of logo at the bottom to replace the tripod, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show you another way to do that in Premiere Pro. I typically don't want a Nadir, but for example, if for example for the client, you could create a branded logo that whenever the viewer looks down, there's a logo of their company or branding. Okay, and I recorded in spatial audio, so I want to make sure that my audio file is correct. 8K, we're filming in 8K footage. And what I will do, once I'm happy with everything, I'll then go to set and preview. And this will enable me in my stitcher to adjust the lines a little bit further, make sure the color is correct. I tend to just do the coloring more in Premiere Pro or Mistika VR. And as you can see, the true north is not in the center of the camera, so I will need to adjust the horizon line, and this step is important to remember for if you want to edit in Mistika VR. So I want to adjust my horizon, so I'll click this grid tab here, and I want the actual center of what's going on to be at the focus of the main frame here. So once I've done that, I will press save, and then save and apply. So we'll just wait for that to load. Okay, so that's going to apply. So we've had a look through our footage, we've set the start and end points, we've set up our project to be rendered out and stitched. I'll just name this scene 2, okay, and then we'll add it to our batch. Now I'm going to show you how to edit this in Mistika VR. What I need to do is open up Insta360 or your software that's provided by your manufacturer. At this point, if you're happy with everything, you can just go ahead and stitch this out. Okay, so then this will be the stitch file that you used in Premiere Pro. But now I'm showing you, if you wanted to go more in depth, what you'll do is save a preview, which will create an iLog file. So this, your Insta360 folder, you'll go to log, and then you'll find a previewer here. So you will see the save template of your 360 footage. So what you'll need to do, or detailed stitch. Okay, so the first thing, I've got Mistika VR open. Now what I need to do is import the file that I've just saved in Insta360 Pro to Stitcher. I need to move all of my lenses over in the correct order. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so working in Mistika VR, this just enables me to go more in detail with editing my 360 footage. I'm not sponsored by Mistika VR, nor have I been asked to promote this software, but from my research and study, this is the most powerful, immersive software for editing 360 video. Now in here, what we've done is we've dragged across each lens, but what we're going to use is the data from our Insta360 Stitcher and use that in Mistika VR. So that's why we filmed with an iLog file that enables us to drag that preview. Let me just make sure that is the correct log. Yeah, it is. Yeah, so that is the correct log. So we're going to use this file and import it into Mistika VR. So what I'll do is go to stitch, log, and preview. So we're going to import the stitch, which you can find in your Insta360 folder. And once we've imported our stitch, we will use Insta360 Pro Collaborate. And as you can see here already, there's some blurring of where I'm standing, and there'll be a lot of movement here, but they're quite far from the camera, so I think that will be okay. And I'll select use optical flow. So, and then I'll increase the feather, not too much, just slightly. Right, now what I'm going to show you is, so we've got our files in here, and as you can see, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in Insta360 Pro, sorry, Mistika VR. And what we're doing here essentially is we're correcting our lenses. So we're going to use this tool here with the blue circle, and this will show us our each lens and our camera lenses, and these red here are the stitch lines. So what I'll be doing is adding an edge point, and I'll be moving the camera so that there is less blur. Okay, so I'll add an edge point here. I've got an edge point there as well, and I'll just have a look at that movement. So essentially what you're doing here is you're fixing your camera lenses and stitch lines so that it's optimized, the optimized viewing, and there's no blurring. And the reason why I moved this lens across slightly is because I was standing originally within a stitch line, so there'll be a bit of blur there. But because most of the main movement is here, actually, I will add an edge point. Let's remove edge point. Okay, and now what we want to do is I want to add an edge point here, because this is where a large chunk of the movement is going to be happening, and I want to make sure that they're not crossing those lines. Okay, and put that. Okay, got my edge points. Okay, and then also here, what we will do is we want the color of our scene to be the same throughout. So if there's sudden bursts of light or, well, different changes in the scene, we want to try and keep it quite similar. So what this will do is balance out and auto correct the color, or you could do it manually. Okay, but I mean, there's not too much going on here, and I filmed at night, so that should be fine. Right, now once I've done that and I'm happy, you can also view it in VR, and you'll be able to look around at the scene. I've got quite a lot of noise in this scene because I'm filming at night time, and you can see that lens there. So here, yeah, so if they was venturing a lot more over to this area here, then I would have to move the stitch line and lens slightly across, but most of the fighting goes on around this area, so that should be fine. And then once you've done that, all you do is go to File, and you'll render this out. So yeah, in Insta360, if what you could do is export your audio file out separately, but I won't be doing that, so I'm just going to do in movie, and we can render this out here. So I'm just going to make sure everything is okay, and then that will render out. It may take a while, but this is how you render in Mistika VR. There's a lot more that you can do, but I've just kept it very basic to show you how to tweak. We'll just let this render out, and you can improve your angles. You can trim and edit your footage, but ideally you just want to tweak your horizon and the stitch lines, because what will happen is if there's for example people close to the camera or walking around here, there'll be a lot of blurring, and it won't make your footage look very good. So ideally in here is where we go in depth and we try to fine tweak everything. So what I've done is used optical flow stitching. I've added a feather. This just creates a feather around my stitching lines, so it's not hard. There's not a hard stitching that when someone's walking across, it's easily viewable. I've selected optical flow range as large, so it's covering a slightly wider area, but where the camera is static, that is not too important. And you can edit the mapping, the focal length, and offset certain areas for your scene. So that's rendering out. We can pause this, and then I'll also render out my file from Insta360 Stitcher. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back, and then that should be rendered out, ready to move over to Premiere Pro. File, but through Insta360 Stitcher. So I've showed you the two ways to stitch your footage and render it out. Now what we're going to do is open up Premiere Pro. To remember is that your project is set up correctly, and we want it to be make sure that it's VR enabled. And before I drag this over, so I'm just going to delete this out, and I'm going to proxy, create a proxy, custom. I've already got my one set here. Okay, QuickTime, 2K, DNX, creating proxy job. Then turning our footage into from 8K into 2K 360 mono. What I'm simply doing is compressing my 8K footage down into my desired resolution type. So now it's gonna render this out into 2K footage, so it makes it easier for me to work with it. Once this is ingested, we'll come back and then continue editing in Premiere Pro. Our file has been ingested with a proxy, and if you're wondering why I look completely different, that's because I had paused the video, but mistakenly I didn't. It was still rolling. I finished the whole tutorial, and come to find, when I press, these things happen. All we can do is keep going. I'm just going to get rid of my chewing gum Pro here, and I'm also going to show you how to edit your text and titles and what you need to do with your footage. Okay, so here I've done a lot more in this project here, but I'm just going to show you an example. So now that my media has been ingested with the 2K footage, if I go here in my project window, you can see I have a category called proxy, and it shows which files have the proxy attached. If you cannot see this, what you need to do is right click in your project window, and you'll have this icon saying metadata display. You need to click that, and you can type in proxy, and it will come up, and you make sure that's selected, and then it will show you here. So what I'm going to do is select one of these, and remember, you mustn't drag over your file into your timeline until the media has been ingested with your proxy. And I'm going to drag this over into my timeline, and as you can see here, that there's a number 4 icon here, which shows that this audio has 4 channels, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is ambisonic spatial audio. To edit this is a whole nother process, so I'm just going to show you briefly. We're going to be working on the media video file rather than the audio. The main part of the action is happening here, so my horizon is incorrect. So the first thing I need to do is go to my effects panel, type VR, and GoPro VR horizon. I'll just layer that on top there, and what I need to do is move this, I believe it's 180, is it? Yes, so if I just type 180 and I put that in the center there. Okay, so now the main action is in the center, and as you can see here, I've still got my tripod legs out of the way, in the frame, which I don't really want to show that, because realistically I should be filming with a mono tripod, which has a smaller footprint. To remove this, I'm going to show you a very quick way to do this. If I just open up Photoshop and I just get that ready. Okay, now what I need to do is I need to create a snapshot of this frame, and I'll label this Nadir 001. Okay, and make sure you select where it's going to be saved. I'm going to save it here into my patch folder, 001 tutorial. A panoramic image from our scene, and I'm then going to select 3D, spherical panorama, new, from layer, from selected layers, and this will open up my panoramic image into its 3D view. So with my move tool V, you'll see now I can look around the scene in 360. Okay, so what I want to do is look for this area where the legs possibly were showing. I want to use my spot healing tool, and I just want to fix this area here so that the legs are not showing. You can also remove the shadow. You can do this for anything else that you don't want in the scene. So I'm just briefly showing you how to remove this. So let's just say it's not really showing very clear here, because when I added the horizon line, it removed my tripod legs out of the way. So I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. I'm just doing this very briefly. I'm not going to do it super accurate, but obviously if you're doing this, you're going to take a lot more time with it. Make sure you're looking at all the details. I've just briefly done that. Then I'm going to double click spherical map, and here you can see we've cleaned up that bit at the bottom there. With your rulers, you're going to drag down a guideline where you believe that the tripod legs stop. You're going to hit add a mask. You're going to select your gradient tool, and you're just going to draw down a line here, so it creates this patch without the tripod legs. Okay, once we've done that, we hit files, save as, and then we go to PNG, save it as a PNG, and make sure that it's the highest quality. So this is one of two ways to remove your tripod leg. Okay, so we go back into our scene. Okay, so we go back into our scene. We find the patch that we just created, and we'll drag this across. So I want you to watch what happens as we drag that across. You can now see that tripod leg at the bottom is removed. I haven't done this very cleanly because I'm just showing you very quickly. This is one of two ways to remove the tripod leg. Well, one of three ways. We could do it like this. We can add a Nadir over the top here before. If I drag this in and drag this across, you'll see that this is our Nadir here, but as you can see, it's just a 2D image and it doesn't have 3D data attached to it. So I'm just going to scale this down a little bit, and what I'm going to do, this is the second way to do it. VR effects, VR plane to sphere, and you can see it squishes it down a little bit. So what you need to do is tilt along the go to rotate projection inside plane to sphere, and you would change the projection tilt along the x-axis to 90 degrees, and I'm actually just going to scale this down a little bit. So then to check that this has worked, if I go into my VR mode and I look down, you can also do this in your VR headset as well. If I look down, now we have a branded Nadir. The other way, and the final way to do this, which is specifically good for moving objects, is I would select my media file and I would grab your pen tool and you draw around, for example. Also, you'll be viewing this in 360. So as we've done in Photoshop, you'd use your orbit camera to look around the scene to find your tripod, and then you'd select generate fill layer. So what this will do is analyze your area and, as refined as possible, take out the bits that stand out, for example the tripod, or if you can apply this to any unwanted objects. So that's just a rough guide roughly how to remove unwanted objects from your scene using After Effects. What else do we need to do? Now I'm going to show you, okay, let's say for example we wanted to add in a title here. Okay, so adding in titles, that's the next thing that you need to do. Just going to drag this into my scene here, and again, with anything you're adding into VR, any 2D properties, we need to add the data to turn it into along 3 different axes, your X, Y and Z axis. Okay, so whenever we've got a text or title, I will go to effects, then I will go to plane to sphere, and I'll drag this on top of my text, and you can see there's a bulge now because it's on 3 different axes. And here I can adjust. If we look at that in VR, this is what it looks like, but I can adjust it down. I can adjust the scale of it, and I can tilt it along the X axis, Y and Z axis. Okay, and then if I want to position it, I can, so I'll put it up here for example. I'll give it maybe a bit of a tilt so it looks like it's in the sky. So it looks like it's in the sky. Let's bring that across, move that down a little bit. So here I've added plane to sphere, and then I've adjusted the rotating it from its source, and now when we look, our title is in the sky. Okay, and I can do this with any other element that I bring into my project. So for example, here I had a splash screen. I've done the same. This is actually 2D right now, that's why it's got that sort of inner warp there. And what I'll do is do the same thing again. I can scale that up, I can rotate it along the X, and the same again, so I can position it where I want it to be. Okay, and then if I wanted to duplicate, if I wanted it so that when someone turns around it's there, I could just duplicate it and then changes the position of its angle. Get a transition from this scene to my new scene. Now you've got to remember, in virtual reality, transitions are not the same as traditional film, because where our user will be looking 360, we don't want it to be a harsh jump between scenes, because that could be very uncomfortable for the user. So in our VR effects, I typically use light leaks or chroma leaks, and then I will edit those. Okay, so I'll just apply that over my clips here, zoom in a bit, and I'll click onto this. Let's bring that in a bit earlier, and if I select here, see that is extremely bright. So in my effects panel here, I'll bring my intensity down to maybe 30, and let's see what the end of it is like. Yeah, so you see, that's okay, that's a nice transition. It's not too intense, and then our next scene is introduced there. And that's that done, or that rectangular is selected, so that Premiere Pro knows that this file is a 360 video line. We need to remember that for multi-channel we've got to select it to adaptive, so this will ensure that it recognizes our 4-channel audio down here. You just apply these same principles and build your project further and further and further, adding more elements, more graphics. For example, you could have a subscribe, or you could have a starting screen, and those are the core principles that you need to remember. If I wanted to, I can let's nest this. let's nest this scene. Okay, and then I'm going to go into my project window, adjustment layer. Okay, bring my adjustment layer here. You don't really need to do this, but you can if you wanted to go a bit further. And then here I'm going to go into cut. Maybe I'll apply a lot over my file. Okay, and then we can adjust the color. This is not in-depth color grading, but if you just wanted to add a different aesthetic to your scene. Remember, if you're pushing out 8K footage, you want to keep it as close as possible and realistic as possible. So I hardly really ever change, add or alter the color. And as you can see here, I was filming in nighttime, and there's quite a lot of noise in my scene. And the reason for this is because I'm working with low light, but I had one light source on top of the camera. In order to balance this out, I should have had one on top of the camera and underneath the camera before the tripod. So that's the correct way if you want to work in using creating 360 in nighttime. Is render this out, export media, and I'm just going to show you quickly to finish this up how to render this out. Okay, I personally prefer to render out in media encoder, just because I find it easier to tweak all the details that I want. But you can also render out directly in Premiere, and this will also reduce the processing time. And the most essential thing is at the bottom here, you need to ensure that this video is VR is selected. And another good tip, what you could do is you could use your proxies. Once you've rendered out your proxies, you could use your proxies to render out this final video. This will cut down your rendering time in half. Okay, so once you've done that and it knows that it's VR, you're good to select export. So that's from start to finish, and then what you'll do is you would upload to YouTube, and then also upload to Oculus Media. If you're not already, make sure to follow us on Oculus Media. You can search GXI 360, where you can see a lot of our VR experiences there. And if you're not already, subscribe to this YouTube channel. Leave your feedback below. If you have any questions, make sure to put them in the comments below. Hopefully it was helpful, and yeah, hopefully you get on well. Good luck with your 360 editing.